Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Devika, and I will be your host for tonight for the Mumbai chapter of C2FO in association with BW Businessworld, celebrating Innovate 2023. Before I begin, one small request. Any one of you, if you would like to go out at some point of time, please do not go from the center of the hall, as we have two static cameras out there. So always move to your right or left, not from the center. Thank you. So as we all have gathered here this evening, we will be focusing on elevating your complex manufacturing supply chains by embedding sustainable strategies. This evening is very, very relevant for each one of us present in this room. And we, as the organizers and as the partners, are thankful to each one of you to give us your time tonight. A little about C2FO. C2FO is one of the leading working capital platform world over. It provides flexible and equitable access to low-cost capital, with a customer base of 2 million businesses worldwide. The corporation has been extremely successful with more than $220 billion, that's right, billion with a B, in funding granted globally. I would request the team at the console to play the C2FO AV and show the audience what C2FO is all about. May we have the AV, please?
C2FO puts managing working capital where it belongs, in your hands. With C2FO, you can view your payables and see how your program performs. The Market Pulse dashboard provides you with the tools you need to review your C2FO performance. You can set up programs that make the most sense for your business. Configure your programs by currency, geography, business units, and more. Allocate more cash in different locations and adjust rates when needed. The C2FO secure online platform is the only solution that offers dynamic pricing for suppliers, blending patented name-your-rate TM technology with guided and preferred pricing to accelerate payments when needed. Create dedicated programs that offer preferential rates for diverse small and mid-sized businesses, as well as programs to help companies that support a broad range of ESG initiatives. With C2FO, you can ensure companies of all sizes have access to low-cost liquidity solutions while linking financial incentives to their impact on sustainability. Programs can be tailored to work in alignment with any existing dynamic discounting or supply chain finance program you offer your trading partners. With C2FO, you can also view program trends, monitor suppliers, and access supplier information. And you have complete visibility of your program and control over your settings. Our dedicated team of professionals will work with you to customize your settings and market your program. We will partner with you to ensure seamless communication and a streamlined user experience. Set your parameters and let our team do the work for you. One of our market operations specialists will monitor your programs, reach out to you with updates, and look for new opportunities to improve your program's performance. You can visit the platform as often or as little as you like. The supplier network gives you a real-time view of your top suppliers. You can see who is participating and to what extent. You can refine your view to show all suppliers in your network or use filters to show what's important to you. Each supplier name is linked to its full invoice listing, and you will be able to review supplier-specific performance data and see which suppliers are benefiting the most from your program. When you click on a supplier, you will get a comprehensive view of their invoices, view the program, get a snapshot of the supplier status, and quickly sort out data by clicking on any column header. With C2FO, you have the flexibility to shorten timelines for outstanding payments on demand with optimal timing for you, your customers, and your suppliers. You can leverage your balance sheet or utilize our global funding network to pay your suppliers without complex paperwork and onboarding. Under the Market Insights tab, you will see daily and historical data in digestible graphs and charts. You can break this data down by any category across any period of time. You can also download the CSV file for use with your own business intelligence tools. See present and future cash invested in C2FO and understand the impact that C2FO has on your balance sheet. C2FO provides you with dynamic ways to manage working capital for your company, your suppliers and your customers, all on a single platform. It's working capital working for you.
Thank you. Thank you for that little video. We did see a couple of C2FO members in the video, and they are out here in the room, so it's easier to recognize them and connect and talk. Coming to BW Businessworld. BW Businessworld is a 41 years young organization led by Dr. Anurag Batra, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief, BW Businessworld, and founder for Exchange for Media Group. We are the fastest growing business media house in India. And with a network spanning across 27 niche business communities and 8 successfully running magazines, we are proud in many verticals, in the domestic as well as in the global business ecosystem. The team at the console, may we please have a short video about BW Businessworld. Thank you for that. Well, a short introduction about me. As I said, my name is Devika. I'm the Senior Manager for Conference Production with BW Businessworld. I'm happy and honored that I'm working with the BW family, and it gives us a lot of opportunities to grow in multifacet. Without further ado, I'd like to call upon Ms. Neha Tyagi, Vice President Business Development from C2FO, to give away the opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Devika. Good evening, everyone. My name is Neha Tyagi. I am currently leading the enterprise business for C2FO in India. A very, very warm welcome and a big thank you to all of you for making it for this evening and joining us for this thought leadership series in collaboration with BW called Innovate 2023. I think Devika and the team have given a great introduction about C2FO. We also ran the AV. We have a bunch of team members here. We'll be very happy to interact and talk to you. So I'll not talk too much about C2FO, but we're very excited to be talking about an interesting topic, which is about managing complex supply chains by embedding sustainable strategies. We thought, why not get industry leaders and veterans like yourself to have a good, interesting, engaging discussion on these topics. So what we've arranged for you is 2 panels, which will be led by the teams. I know we're running a little late on time, so we'll be happy to take questions on C2FO on the go, but I hand it over to BW team for running the panel. So over to you, Devika. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neha. Well, as Ms. Neha Tyagi mentioned, that it's more about conversations, engaging, and exchange of knowledge. So while we take the panel up on the stage, we will be opening the house for questions after the moderated session. So anyone interested to ask any question to the speakers on stage, please feel free. Well, uh, as we start with it, our first engaging panel discussion is about role of technology in redressing liquidity problems in complex manufacturing supply chains. The Pandit perspectives on building sustainability via collaborative fintech platforms. May I call upon stage Dr. Sriram Swaminathan, Group CFO, Punjab Chemicals UPL Group, Mr. Anish Shukla, Chief Customer Officer, Wellspun One Logistics Parks, Mr. Nikhil Bhagchandani, Deputy Director, Marketing, Vedanta Limited Aluminium Business. To moderate the session, we have Mr. Arjun Yadav, the correspondent, BW Businessworld. May we please welcome them on stage with a round of applause, please. Arjun, over to you.
Check. Can we dim the lights a bit, please? They're too bright. Yeah, it's better. All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Devika, for the introduction and handing over to me. The first panel today, of course, as she said, is the role of technology in addressing liquidity problems in complex manufacturing supply chains. And the perspectives here that our speakers will give on building sustainability via collaborative fintech platforms. Now, just to give a bit of a context, if you look at the year 2022 so far, hope you just about read it, but it has been one turbulent year. Starting with the war in Eastern Europe and the subsequent inflation that economies across the world went through, and the subsequent monetary tightening that led to liquidity problems for a lot of industries, be it auto and manufacturing. I track the stock markets, and believe me, right before 2 or 3 days before, let's say, the Fed is about to come with its outcome, or the RBI is about to come with its MPC outcome, these rate-sensitive sectors, they tremble, right? So there's a liquidity crisis in these sectors. While I was preparing, I also came across this fact that among these sectors, about 9 to 10% of the value of goods is spent in warehousing, cost of inventory, and capital wastages, pilferages. And this is compared to the developed world. When you compare it, there it is just 1 to 2%. So obviously there is a liquidity crisis, and I would like to start my first question. Dr. Swaminathan, if you're facing liquidity problems, I want to understand what are the advantages of having access to working cash flows and how it helps in building resilient trading partnerships.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us for this Innovate 2023. I am Sriram and I am working with UPL for the last 15 years, and currently with Punjab Chemicals, which is one of the associate company for UPL. So that's my background. So coming back to your question, are you asking what is the advantage, right? Yes, for the working capital. So basically, if you look at it, cash is the king, and cash flow is a lifeline for any business. Any manufacturing company or any service industry company, they offer their services, their products, but ultimately to convert into cash. So unless you convert that into cash, you are not in the business. See, there are many companies which will be profitable, but if it is not, end of the day, if you don't make cash, you will be running out of business. So that's the reason it's very, very important. That's the reason it's advantage to have cash flow which is very positive on a day in and day out basis. If you look at it, any manufacturing company or a service company also, most of the, out of the total income they generate, almost 50 to 60% will be the cost of the raw material which they need to spend and give it to the vendors, So they need to get the material. So similarly, there are a lot of other expenses that you need to pay on a day-to-day basis. For example, utilities. If you don't pay the utility on time, MSCB, let's say in Bombay or any other utility company, they will simply come and cut your unit, and you will not be producing anything. So similarly, the raw material vendor, if you don't make him pay, or if you don't pay him, so where will he go? He has to produce. So it's going to be a challenge for everyone, and the cash movement basically runs the entire ecosystem for the country or for the complete trade. So that's the reason.
Thank you, Dr. Swaminathan, for those opening comments. Nikhil, your quick views on this?
Of course, I will also circle back to the point what you made about the liquidity, how is it required, and the amount of money which actually gets wasted due to, I would say, inefficient supply chains. And I would also agree upon what Dr. Swaminathan said, that cash is king. The businesses don't die because they're not profitable. But if you don't have cash to run the business, that's the end of it. So on day-to-day basis, you need to manage your cash, you need to manage your liquidity, and you need to find all kind of innovative solutions in this complex and competitive world to have that cash, and at times cash at a cost. So when you are having cash at a cost, then what is that cost which goes into your balance sheet? So it is definitely very, very important. And when back to the supply chain problems, you mentioned that in the Western world, the problem is 1 to 2% rather than in India it's around 9 to 10%. So I'll just give you a very basic example, that if somebody, let's say, imports raw material from India vis-a-vis what he was able to buy from India, just the supply chain time what he has to manage for the import would be probably 2 to 3 times more than what he can get in India itself. So if you can just crash the timeline even by 10 days in a month, you're crashing it by 30%.
Thank you. Anil, just if you would like to add something to both of these points.
Any supply chain efficiency point of view, yes, and there's a lot of things that we can improve, more doubt about it. But purely the infrastructure point of view, I think it plays a very vital role. And what we've seen in the last few years, the infrastructure that's happening now, will play a very vital role, significant role going forward to kind of start bringing down the cost. Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, but it will come. It will eventually come. And I think what I'm happy about is, about 20 years back, a lot of that conversation always used to be focusing on raw material cost and the pricing cost and so on and so forth. I think after maxing out all of these things, everyone's now starting to focus on the supply chain cost. But the fact that we are sitting here and addressing that question and saying that we are 9 to 10% loss of efficiency versus 1 to 2% to Western world, that itself says a lot about the thrust and focus on supply chain. So yeah, I'm good with that. That's the end of 25.
If you want to add on, I just want to add on a little more on this. So basically, if you look at it, last 2 years when the COVID was there, and there were many of the industries like hospitality and other industries were down with no income and no cash flow. So they were struggling. And now post-COVID, they have started innovating themselves, how do we reduce the overall cost, and how do we ensure that cash flow increases. So if you look at it, in India, many companies are growing and there are leaps and bounds. When the company grows, you need more working capital. So where do you go? So that's the reason this becomes very important for you to address this in a very early stage.
Working capital solutions, and from here on I'll also open the floor for the audience as well, but before that, the panelists, Nikhil, if you would like to start the collaboration aspect with fintech platforms to provide optimal working capital solutions.
Okay, so again, what Dr. Swaminathan said that about the gross working capital, what a company requires to run a business, you need to have the access to the cash or the capital, and at times the time what you need to get the access to the capital is very important, along with the interest rates, along with the competitive market, what you need to serve into. So I think this is the place where the fintech players come into perfectly, because discounted and the money can be generated and given to the right party, with all the risk and governance parameters being controlled digitally and through data. So I think it's the right solution for a growing economy like India. Dr. Swaminathan, your comments on this?
Yeah, absolutely. For any Indian manufacturing scenario today, we need to. I mean, any company need to earn adequate working capital to run their business. So basically, when you are a very either a startup company or you want to have a greenfield project you want to put in India or anywhere else, so you need to have long-term capital in your kitty, so you can invest in your plant and machineries and things like that. Having done that, for working capital, unless the entire working capital chain moves around from one company to another company, to third company to fourth company, if it is if it is standstill, nothing will move. So that's very important. So to bridge this particular working capital gap, a lot of banks are out there in the market where you can approach them and do business. So typically, if you go to a bank or an NBFC, the process is very long. First of all, so they will ask you a lot of questions. What is your visibility? What is your cash flow? What is your next 5 years plan? What are you going to do? They have n number of questions. To satisfy each and everything is going to be tough. So that's the reason the fintech companies, when they are coming up with various options, and they have already tied up with various NBFC banks. So they are basically both from the demand side, they know the information which is available with them, what people want, and from supply side also they know they have tied up with all the banks, so they know who are having surplus funds. So with this scenario, these fintech companies can moderate and also get a better ROI as far as the rate of interest is concerned. Typically, if you go to a bank, they have very set standards. They have you need to do your own credit rating. Once you do your credit rating, you are AA plus, you get a particular rate. If you are in double B or triple B, your rate of interest is different. So they have those parameters. They work on that. Whereas if the fintech company comes in, they know which are the banks which is having more cash with them. They can deploy this for your use. And who are the companies who want this kind of cash flow on a regular basis. So on both the sides, if they capture this data, I mean, they are in a better place to they are in a better place in the entire ecosystem to come out with a better ROI and also have a cash flow on time. So that's my view.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Swaminathan. Before I come to you with the question, I had Yamini Chaudhary from C8, who's the Assistant General Manager for Treasury, who wanted to answer on this. Yamini? Can we have a mic, please?
And good evening, everyone. We have been using fintech for a long time now, and like the panelists have mentioned, working capital on a day-to-day basis management is much more important than looking at a longer horizon in an economy as dynamic and volatile as this year has been seen. So on the customer side, on the supplier side, maintaining the equilibrium on the receivables and the payables is all the more important, where the supply chain times have been increased to maintain that supply of raw material and the relationship also with the vendors and the customers. And like Sir mentioned, fintech only helps in engaging with all the financial institutions. The company don't have to go to individual banks or NBFCs to negotiate and do to and fro basically. So that has been really helpful, and I think it is one of the major critical roles in time management and hence the cash management for the company.
Right. Thank you, Yamini, for your answer. Ane,
Obviously, there is capital which is then deployed to buy land and build warehouses and then lease out. So purely from a perspective of being ahead of the curve. Now, one of the key aspects of a development cycle is your time management, your raw material management, vendor management, and effectively cash management. And while there are lots of products available from a fintech side, from an ERP side, to really kind of manage each of them cycle. There is no single product available which is connecting all of them together. So we have an in-house basically developed a tool, if I may say, where once I plug in which building or which particular block or size of the block that we start building, right, when we start the process of construction, right from the pre-construction stage itself, when I plug that in, it really extrapolates the entire timeline that is required, what are the resources that are required, what is the cash that is required, how is the cash flow looking for the next 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, how does that translate into the capital management side of it, the resource management. So it's a very comprehensive tool that has been developed connecting all the dots for all the stakeholders, not just the construction side of it, but also the finance side of it. And it gives a complete transparency to the entire stakeholder management, not again from a internal company perspective, but also to my customers. So if I am a customer and I lease a particular building with Welspun One, then I get a complete view, visibility of how is that building being tracked. 9 months ahead, if there is a delay, if there is an issue, because of rainfall, because of raw material, like you mentioned about the Ukraine war, obviously commodity prices shot up, so raw material scarcity was there. So my dashboard is able to throw out saying that this building is running late by 15 days, 30 days, but that visibility is available to a customer probably 6 months ahead of time. Right? So it's a very important tool, very effective tool that we've realized, which is connecting all the stakeholders. And from the finance side, like I said, from a financial perspective, it really kind of helps us extrapolate the cash management that is required over the next 3 months, 6 months, on a monthly basis. So it's a very effective tool that we're doing. I think it's really helpful. First time in the development that's happening.
Right, thank you, Ane. Dr. Swaminathan, going back to this fintech aspect that we were discussing in our previous question, I want to understand, if you can elaborate more, that what value would a fintech platform serve for you, your company, as a seamless collaborative tool for your manufacturers and trading partners probably?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Actually, I mean, the C2FO can answer this much better than me, but being an experienced player in this particular field, and also IT is for me, technology is my passion. I can add on. So basically, as I told earlier, the fintech companies, they are basically aggregating, both on the demand side, also on the supply side. So these companies can tie up with various NBFCs and banks, not only, from India, but, across the globe. For example, some companies, some countries, if you have noticed, the cost of funding is quite low. For example, in Europe, earlier the Euribor was, trading negative. So any loans you get from there, you get at a very, very attractive rate. Okay. In fact, we ran a program where with, DBS and other, I should not openly say this, but we were getting interest rate of 0.9% per annum. So that's ridiculously low as far as we were working. So these fintech companies can tie up with various countries. For example, even Japan, you can look at it. Their history, the cost of funding is quite low there. So the funds can move from one country to another country, and that's what is happening. In fact, if you look at the equity market also, the funds are coming when it comes from outside. There is a stock boom here in India. So similarly, when they exit, the stock completely crashes. So these are some of the phenomena. So when they fund in India, so they come out with a very attractive rate of interest. So that's one thing. So these fintech guys can collaborate with so many banks, and not only from India, from also outside India. So how they integrate that with Indian system, for Indian RBI point of view, that's they have to look at. So number one. Second is if you look at from a traditional working capital cycle, or when you go to the bank and you need to, as I told you, there are a lot of processes involved. So fintech companies, when they come in, it becomes more of a paperless kind of a system where you just give a balance sheet, you give your KYC, and you're registered with them. So once you're done this, they go on scout up with various bankers, and they come out with very good options. So these are the two things. And most important thing is you need to be today use the IT as a backbone. I'm sure C2FO or any other companies would have also built in AI into their system, where they can identify which are the companies are going to target and use their system. So they can easily do this. So similarly, now if you see, Google, if you look at it, when you type when you're replying to any letter, automatically it throws out some information, it throws out the way you would have replied to any customer or any vendor. So similarly, AI in this platform will work wonders for everyone. In fact, I would say, if you look at it traditionally, when India got independence, we were, normally when they do a business, it's like a win-lose kind of a situation where the customer is winning and the supplier is losing, because that is the kind of mindset people are carrying. Then came the scenario where there is a win-win situation. Both vendor and supplier need to win, and both of them are at par when they are doing any deal or any business. So those are the things. But now today, if you look at it, it's a win for all. Win for all concept, where we are customer on one side, we are the vendor or supplier on the other side, we are the bank, the NBC, who is supporting the entire ecosystem, and there's a fintech company. If all the all the four, in fact, comes into one platform or one setup, and it's going to be a win for all. It's going to be a win for all. That's my take on this.
Yeah, thank you, Swaminathan ji. Clearly open for all. Nikhil, your collaborative tool for financing needs for manufacturers and trading partners.
See, there is a common thread or a common element on both the sides, whether it's a buyer or seller, and that common element is time. And the definition of a time for a buyer and seller to raise cash or to get credit might be different. Somebody wants to get cash in 30 days, somebody can give a credit up to 60 days. So that is where a fintech platform can create those kind of flexibilities for various partners involved on it, and can provide the right interest rates along with the right period on both sides. So this flexibility is the kind of the solution which partners in manufacturing setup, suppliers, buyers, trading partners, they all look for it.
Thank you, Nikhil. From the audience, if we can have anybody elaborate on it, if they want to. No issues. I'm sure in the next question we'll have some hands going up. Panelists, my last question to all of you. As a business media publication, if you look at the past 1.5 months, one of the news items that have made to the front pages, let's say, is Apple shifting its base to India, right? First, initially in October, it was for the iPhones. Now, this week, it was for the iPads. But this is just one of the examples. And there are a plethora of companies are trying to do that. Now, as the Prime Minister has his thrust on Make in India, and his priorities, indigenization and competitive manufacturing facilities, how do you see durable manufacturing supply chains here giving that competitive edge? Ane, if you would like to start.
So I think it's a very crucial part of our economy thriving for the next few years, right? Today, in manufacturing contributes only about 15-16% of the overall GDP. If we are to move to the 5 trillion target that the PM has set for us, we really have to get to about 25%. Manufacturing has to contribute to 25% of the economy. And that's a very massive jump that we're looking at. And I think from the government side, there are significant schemes and incentives being rolled out, infrastructure manufacturing facilities. So it's a very, very important step, no doubt. And like you said, the Apple is just one of the tip of the iceberg. We're seeing that thrust really happening. From a resiliency point of view, I think we all know that typically today's scenario is mostly the China plus one model, where everyone's starting to look at an alternative to China. Some countries are exploring a Vietnam, some countries are exploring a Thailand, and obviously India is also in the race to kind of being that plus one right now. Maybe eventually it will get to a level where we shed that plus one tag and we stand alone on ourselves. But the advantages of India are obviously manufacturing, the manpower being available, skilled labor being available, the infrastructure is improving, the power situation is becoming conducive for manufacturing setup now. So there are a lot of positives that are being worked out around it, and we all know that the predominantly supply chain resiliency depends on the manpower, capital availability, information availability, the transparency in information, so on and so forth. I think the key crux part really of this is the physical infrastructure of it. And when I say physical infrastructure, one key component of the entire supply chain is that facility that we are building, be it for manufacturing or be it for a storage or processing, whatever you call it. Now, if you look at really the entire supply chain, components of the supply chain, be it people, transportation, money flow, whatever it is, there are a lot of flexibility available. There is a lot of short-term changeovers available. What is difficult to change is the facility. Right? The building that you build eventually is something which forms a very vital component of this whole scheme of things, because that's something you can't change overnight. Right. So the resiliency actually depends on the building, location, the type of building, all these things. There is a lot of design elements coming in from a warehousing side again, that organizations which had the right building or right warehouse in the right location were far more better equipped to handle that COVID impact than the ones who were moving reactive to it. So I think it's a very vital component. Second part of it, we're all looking at the ESG parameters right now, right? I mean, a lot of thrust coming in on the sustainability side. Right. The buildings that we are designing today and constructing today have to be capable to handle the ESG constraints and parameters of tomorrow, if I may say. I mean, we are obviously very small on our ESG focus today, but that focus is at least coming in forums like this. We are discussing about it. I'm sure the day wouldn't be far, like we're talking about the supply chain cost, where the ESG also starts becoming a very vital parameter of the entire conversation that we have. So the buildings that we build today have to be able to sustain or get into that sustainability mode of tomorrow, conversation of tomorrow. So that building forms a very, very vital crux of the entire resiliency parameter. So that's my view.
Thank you so much, Anil. Nikhil, your views on this? I mean, there's no counter to it, to be honest. I mean, everybody is looking at India to become the manufacturing powerhouse, and we have got all the ingredients to be there. Now, talking from Vedanta's perspective, I believe we are aware that Vedanta has already announced a very large investment in the semiconductor industry. Along with that, we have the largest single aluminum smelting site, and that's in Odisha. Now, coming back to a very important point, what I made, that once you have a particular site and a location, that kind of creates some constraints. We actually see it the other way, because it also creates opportunities. Now, if you look at the supply chain, what is required in aluminium, the metal is transported, then remelted, semi-fabs are made, fabs are made, and then the final product is made. There is a way to completely reduce the supply chain stress, the conversion costs, and actually make a positive impact on ESG by supplying aluminum hot metal directly to the consumers. So that is what has happened. Just 10 days back, in a grand event in Odisha, we launched Vedanta's Aluminum Metal Park, and a specific designated area around the smelter has been cleared that industries can be set up over there and hot metal can be supplied. So you are saving on energy costs, you are saving on transportation costs, you are actually saving on supply chain costs, in fact, because the timelines have been crashed. So the gross working capital requirement and the interest around it, that cost is also saved. The technology and the manpower and the R&D supply with a large company like Vedanta being associated with you is also over there. So the skill part is also being addressed. So I think all of these factors, along with, of course, the right government push in this direction, is definitely making the real change in India.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Swaminathan. Your quick views on the India's shining story.
Yeah, I totally agree with both the panelists what they shared just now, and I support that. If you look at it from our own company's perspective, UPL is close to $6 billion company, and we are both organically and also through acquisition we grew to this level. Starting from almost 1996. So if you look at it, UPL also outsourced close to $2.3 billion worth of raw materials from across the globe. So the strategy is to convert this to manufacturing in India, make in India. So basically if you look at it from that point of view, there are huge potential, you know. So if you look, even if you look at it, you know, India being more of a service industry, there are a lot of exports happening in IT services. So the other, you know, areas of manufacturing, we should take it as a challenge and bring about a complete change. And China plus one, what friend shared, I also believe there are huge potential. You know, all the multinational companies which come in India, China, you know, when this COVID started, they had a zero COVID policy, and the entire supply chain of you know, their products got disrupted during the last 2 years. So that is the reason many of the multinational companies in agrotech, you know, agrichemicals and agro AI, they are looking at India as one of the big source. And if we live up to that challenge, definitely we can you know, be way ahead as of you know, as compared to today. That's
Right.
my view.
Right. From the audience, I think we had Mr. Amit Mahajan from Henkel India who had to share something.
I can give a bit of the multinational perspective. I think from Henkel, we are very bullish on India, moving a lot of our facilities to India. In fact, we went live with one plant just the beginning of this year, and we are already out of capacity. The demand is huge, and that's the scenario with not just with our own plants, but you can imagine with our suppliers and obviously with our customers. So. Very bullish. Henkel globally is very bullish on India. In any global forums we sit, you know, I get the feeling that we used to have 15 years back with China is the same kind of bullishness that we have today with India. So I would say this is our moment and we need to grab it.
Right. Thank you so much, Ramit. They gave a very clear perspective on redressing liquidity problems, of what the importance of working cash flows is, the importance of fintech platforms, how the collaboration can help, and it can become a collaborative tool for manufacturers and trading partners, and of course, the bullishness on in the India story. Thank you so much, panelists, for your time. Thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause once more?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sustainability, as we all know, has been more than a buzzword now. It has, to some extent, been done to death. And we have expanded its horizon, and now we call it ESG, which is environment, social, and governance, which is something companies are strongly paying heed to, including investors and startups alike. So today we are here to discuss a very specific aspect of sustainability, which is sustainability along the supply chain. As we have all seen, sustainability has gone into our personal, professional, and social life as well. We are witnessing the rise of solar panels, EV batteries, EV cars, and the like. And of course, how can we leave supply chain behind? So today we have a very dense panel amongst us, not just because of the number of people, but the large minds we have here and the amount of experience they carry. So with that, let me just dive into the first question by defining what sustainability along the supply chain means. Let's start with you, Mr. Datta.
Thank you very much, and very good evening to everybody. You said sustainability to the supply chain, right?
Yes.
To me, and I will represent it in a little different manner, I think the supply chain for last 2 decades were majorly evolved based on the efficiency, be it cost-based, logistic-based supply, and also for a synergy between various channels of business. It was one of the most critical parameter of an organization, and it was probably most sustainable part of every organization. But going forward, to us, the sustainable supply chain model has 4 buckets. One, definitely without looking into anything, hands down, I can say ESG, followed by a digital, I will just elaborate it maybe a little later, followed by financial, and followed by future. The last part is very important, and the Innovate 2023 looks to be very interesting on that. Innovation will be the differentiation between the big player and the innovative player going forward, and that will be the supply chain in future of sustainability. It is not only the way we are looking at.
Yes, of course, sustainability can mean different things to different people. For some, it can be plugging all the cogs along the way. For some, it can be making a positive impact on the environment. So with that, Mr. Mahajan, my question is towards you, which is similar to what I asked Mr. Datta. As you just mentioned that you are going headstrong into India and looking to expand. So how are you planning to make this a sustainable expansion, especially along the supply chain, which is from step A to step Z, all the way?
So, yeah, thanks, Urvi. So maybe I'll just give a little bit of an introduction about Henkel. We are a German company. We are into adhesives, beauty care products, and laundry products. Like BW is 41 years young, we are about 160 years young. So, about the sustainable supply chain, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the sustainable supply chain. So, and I'll talk specifically, I think, in the context of ESG. We like my panelist rightly mentioned, the traditional view of supply chain has been around efficiency, around cost. In about the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen a very marked shift around the ESG discussion. Our customers are now specifically bringing to the table the discussion about ESG. Not just on how are our products sustainable? How is our organization contributing to sustainability? How is our entire end-to-end supply chain responsibly behaving towards sustainability? All of these questions have now become part of the discussions that we have with our customers and obviously subsequently with our suppliers. So this is very much a part of the let's say the core discussions that we have now, unlike what we used to have in the past when it was mostly focused around cost or some such discussions. So from our perspective, sustainability has now arrived to the customer tables as well as to the boardrooms. So for us, this is something that we are now hugely focused on. We have dedicated teams across countries that are now focused on sustainability. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you've broadly described the topic at hand very well. So with that, sir, I would like to bring you into the conversation regarding the company which is Blue Star Limited. So how are you enforcing, if I have to talk at a company level, what are the sustainable practices or the resilient practices, resilient sustainable practices that you are bringing into your company that were not there earlier, as well as the industry trends when it comes to your sector?
So when it comes to Blue Star, I'll just say that probably we are looking at every aspect of it. So right from the factory, how you are going to give the ergonomics, everything to the employees right from there. So it's not just about vendors. Sustainability has to be all through. So we are also looking at, when we look at the vendors in terms of the one aspect which you did not get probably touched upon earlier, I'll just say that how are you going to digitize the trade documents? We are looking at that aspect because that's going to cut down on the financing time even higher in a much, much bigger way. So, we are trying to focus on that aspect. So, if you have to ask me about how sustainability has to be looked at, I'll just say that probably I don't know how many of over here know Dave Brailsfeld of Team Sky. Okay, what did he do with Tour de France when he was given the opportunity for the UK team? Till that point of time, they had never won the cycling in 100 years history. Okay, but when he took over in 2010, he started doing every 1% improvement. Whether it was just which gel they were using, which pillow they are sleeping on, what are they eating for breakfast, everything was looked at. Because that every 1% improvement helped him build a team in a way where the first winner came out in the 3 years, in 2013, and then they have 6 winners in the next 7 years, when they had not won in 100 years. So the aspect is, when you are looking at sustainability, look at everything, even if it is 1%. So it's not that only something, we have to look at what is, it's a big word when you say about sustainability. But the point is, sustainability has to be looked at right from employees to vendors to the financing to your what products you are using. So whether you are using recyclable plastics, okay, that is something which we are looking at. What is the kind of, in terms of R&D investment which we are doing. So the R&D investment is in gases, is in refrigerant, which are sustainable. So across the company, we have to look at which are the areas which are getting covered. And that will make the entire system sustainable.
Right. It is, as I mentioned earlier, we have to go from A to Z when it comes to sustainability. It is not just one aspect. So with that, Mr. Mantri, I would like to ask this question to you. You had a huge company like Jindal Stainless Steel. So when it comes to a hardware-based business, sustainability often takes a back seat, as we have seen that they are some of the most polluting industries of the world, especially cement. So how do you ensure that you bring in sustainable practices? Can you share some anecdote or some challenge that you had to face in your business currently or previously? And of course, how did you overcome it?
So you started with that we are probably the most polluting industry. But let me just correct few things. I think people synonymous with the steel, we are into stainless steel, which is the most sustainable metal as compared to aluminum or carbon steel. And the world is talking about circular economy. Let me tell you, our process is completely based on 100% scrap. So we make entire stainless steel from the scrap route, and we are the largest buyer in the entire Southeast Asia for the scrap. So most of our scrap, good quality scrap actually, because we started using stainless steel much later in our development, and most of us uses stainless steel at a very low strata, which is the largely utensil segment. But in US, Canada, European Union, they started using stainless steel much into their railways infrastructure part. So we source large quality scrap. For us, that's why logistic comes. So we are 100% based on the scrap-based production, where the world is now talking about moving to scrap-based production. Second, in terms of our ESG commitment towards it, we are much ahead in terms of our carbon emissions, because whatever we decided now, whatever new expansion, we are doubling our capacity, and it's completely fueled by the renewable, which is very difficult in a heavy energy sensitive industry for like us. The other thing is that because why we could do that, because now most of the steel players are still made of the blast furnace. Our process is based off electric arc furnace. People are moving. I am sorry to be bit technical because you started with polluting. So we are not really a polluting industry. But if you see, we have also, in terms of as an industry leader, we are the largest stainless steel manufacturer of the country. And almost, if I remove the lower end utensil segment, we contribute 75% of market share in India. So because that segment particular we don't want to get, because when you go and buy the utensil, you don't ask which stainless steel it's made. You just buy the Chinese stainless steel most of the time. And so we need to have a very sustainable thing. But in terms of the ESG side of the sustainability, because what happens is that when we mapped our carbon emission, you will be surprised that only 30% of our carbon emission were coming from scope 1 and scope 2. Which is directly from which is coming, and because we have a very detailed analysis of our carbon emission, because we are electric arc furnace 100% scrap based. You will be surprised that 70% of our carbon emission comes from scope 3, which includes, out of that 30% come from our suppliers, and almost 7% comes from the logistics. So I think the things which we need to correct in the country is the supplier side and the logistics side. And sorry for being a bit longer on my answer, because ESG is very committed to us, and we had a leading industry practices in ESG, where we are working on the various forums with the government and ministries also. So when you talk about like suppliers, so we had a just vendors meet just last month, and we called all our vendors, and all our vendors are recurring vendors. So sustainable, they have been associated with us almost last 10 years because they are scrap traders and other guys who comes to us. So we have made them educated, and if you see even from our imports, India is largely import lot of carbon emission because we are still love of the Chinese goods, where the entire process is based on the carbon emission. So we'll have to first correct our own, in fact, the way we use and the way we consume the things. That's very, very critical in the sustainable supply chain development.
Since we're talking about supply chain, one ever-pervasive aspect of our life now is technology. And supply chain is, of course, not untouched from it. So, Mr. Mahajan, I would like to ask you this question. How are you using AI, ML, IoT, and the like to make supply chain more sustainable?
So within Henkel, we have actually brought most of these technologies to the mainstream of supply chain. We are actively using AI for inventory management. How this relates and how this benefits us from a sustainable perspective, and also let me mention we are using as well for our logistics as well. We are using a whole lot of Industry 4.0 practices. So I think Anurag already mentioned, how logistics is one of the factors which need to be brought under the ambit of sustainability. We realize that not just in India but globally. We are actively looking at technologies that help us figure out where exactly the material is at any point of time. Also, we are trying to figure out where, or we are trying to make sure that our trucks or our containers that are leaving from point A to point B, they are optimally loaded. So if a container has a capacity of, let's say, 20 tons, we are trying to make sure it's loaded to 20 tons. How that helps is it reduces the number of trips of that container or of that truck, and therefore reduces the the petrol or the diesel consumption, and thus leading to more sustainability. How we do it, a huge contribution of technology there. We have our we have our, I mean, I can go technical, but we have a fair amount of let's say technologies that are now helping us with this, and that's what I'll suffice with. Thank you.
Mr. Datta, what's your take about the use of AI ML when it comes to building resilience? And is Alana Group having any in-house R&D, or are you using technology that is available to the public, and how?
Yeah, so first is very specific to us. Being into the food industry, we are highly regulated, right? So there are very stringent compliances that one has to do. So if I take it as only a compliance part, then I will say, okay, fine, we are doing it. But what you are talking about is very specificity. Is that future ready? Is my compliance now oriented to the future sustainability, right? The compliances which are applicable to us even today is 100 plus years old. Some of the policy parameters were not even touched by any countries in the last 50 years, right? So going forward, he was talking about the Industry 4.0 or the AI ML that you are talking about. We have not restricted them only for MIS, so-called financial and the production planning, any kind of an internal planning. We are moving into the end-to-end I will not say more AI-driven, but more ML-driven issues in the end-to-end supply chain management. I'm a little skeptical in using this word called supply chain, because gone are the days this SCM is actually restricting them to supply. My feel is that it's probably the biggest source of sustainability. We should replace the supply by the source and look at that how in future any organization can work within the periphery of collaborativeness. Somebody was talking about people who are giving a 30% of the total carbon emission. I think that's very critical. Going forward, collaborative approach and a kind of an R&D which you are talking about, and close to the destination. Management will be very important. We are manufacturing in some other country, selling it in some other country. I think going forward, this will also undergo a change.
That's some very practical and well thought out advice, I would say. And with that, I would like to invite the audience into the discussion. We have Mr. Anay Shukla, who's from Welspun, as you must have heard him in the last panel. So Mr. Shukla, my question towards you is, Welspun deals heavily in warehousing, and warehousing is an integral part of the supply chain and logistics. And it is also the most static part. Once the building is constructed, once the warehouse is constructed, it is done and dusted. Everything else, be it transport, technology, or manpower, is flexible. So how can we include ESG practices or sustainable resilient practices, as we have the topic, into warehousing part of the supply chain?
Earlier discussion also, the warehouse forms a very static part, needless to say very important part, but a very static part of the entire supply chain or value chain. So the building has to be able to take, like I said, the sustainability of today, tomorrow, and so on and so forth. What we are trying to do right now, obviously, needless to say, the solar panels form a very important part of that. The water management, the STP, water WTP at the park level is something that we are really trying to push. Our parks currently are IGBC green, platinum rated, so green standard point of view. But the key crux is, are they going to be able to sustain the parameters of tomorrow? So when I say that warehouses are really, earlier gone are the days when warehouses were very storage oriented. Today warehouses are very processing oriented. There is a lot of processing that happens, which means there is a lot of energy consumption that happens in the warehouse also. So the solar panels or the energy consumption that was very minimalistic earlier. And then again we are sweating the assets. So what was a 8-hour shift is now gone to a 24-hour shift, continuous usage of the warehouses and so forth. So sustainability plays a very vital role, and we are trying to bring that to the fore, where eventually we've taken a target, for example, in the next 3 years, all the common areas in a warehousing park should be off or should be consumed from a renewable energy. So we are trying to create completely off the grid. So all the common area amenities which are running on electricity should really kind of be converted into. So those are the kind of parameters we look at, and those are the thrusts that we put. Yeah, it's challenge going and really selling that from price point of view. But I think we all have to move from a cost to an ownership cost model. Eventually, there is a cost to sustainability, if not today, tomorrow.
I think we've all realized of maintaining a healthy environment. So with that, let's just come back to our panel. And since I'm talking about the pandemic, Mr. Soni, I wanted to ask you, what are the lessons that you have learned with respect to maintaining a healthy supply chain, given that we had faced bottlenecks during the pandemic and even during the Russia-Ukraine war when it comes to export and import, especially in the energy sector? So what are your key takeaways that you are going to be implementing now to build a robust supply chain?
Yeah, so I think what pandemic taught everyone was, it was no longer just in time, it became just in case inventory, because everyone wanted inventory not to lose production. So what that also caused, it caused what in supply chain is called a bullwhip effect. If you see what happened after pandemic was, people were expecting a lot of pent up demand, and therefore everyone started stocking much more. One, to take care of the uncertainty. Second, to take care of the demand which is going to increase. In some industries, the demand did not come the way it was expected, and which means people were saddled with a lot of inventory. So all of this is still there in the system today. So some industries, if you see, are saddled with huge stocks. And that is the reason of the bullwhip effect which was there because of the pandemic. So what pandemic has taught us is, as I said, you have to have just in time and just in case, for which what Mr. Datta said is very important, is it's time to get the vendors into India if you are buying from outside of India. So your government has come out with the PLI schemes. So this PLI scheme should have been used also to get the vendors in, not just to invest into our factories, so that you have the source which is nearer, because that is going to be sustainable. That will help you marry just in time and just in case. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. And given the uncertainty today, it is not easy to manage stocks, because particularly when you come to industries which are seasonal in nature. Okay, so I come from an industry which is very seasonal. So if you come to air conditioning, there's going to be a seasonal demand. In Q4, it's going to be the Q1. Now, if in that case, if you just try to stock too much and the sales don't happen because of pandemic in that quarter, okay, it's going to be hit across, and it's not a bigger corporate can sustain it. Please understand, the vendor at that point of time will not be able to sustain. So that's why what pandemic has taught us is one, end to end. Don't just take care of yourself, take care of end to end, and this end continues beyond your tier 1. So tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, you have to look at the entire chain and ensure that the entire chain is well financed, entire chain is taken care of. Otherwise, any such effect which comes again, you are going to have a severe shock. So we have to realize that uncertainty is given, and it's a part of your life now. So the way we have to be sustainable is to understand this uncertainty and try to see how we are going to manage that. And look at the entire value chain, not up to only your vendor, but beyond that also.
I think you made a valid point that we must have most of the players in the supply chain around the same area or in the same country, which is why PLI schemes, as you mentioned, become very important, so that we have minimum probability of failure. So that, Mr. Mantri, I wanted to ask you that steel is a very heavy industry when it comes to supply chain management, be it transportation from the field to the final product to the market. As you said, we go and buy Chinese steel when you talk about buying stainless steel utensils. So what are your key takeaways from the last 3 years?
As I mentioned, large part of our raw material comes from outside India because it's scrap, and it comes from far shores. Far shores, like we actually contract at an onshore basis, but typically it takes a 45 to 60 days voyage time from the scrap is starting from Canadian shore or the US shore or some of the European shore. So it's a large part, but we track each and every, because with AI and all this thing, that what kind of and when it's landing in our plant and what time it's getting from our plant for the finished goods. Similarly, on a sales side also, we have a huge exports. So we do almost $1 billion export, and largely again to a high economy. We are on the high end of the product range. So our largest market is Germany, followed by the European Union, US and Russia. Only 3 markets which we get as on export side. So in terms of the entire, we'll have to be under complete control of our entire supply chain and also the logistic cost. We are into a very thin margin business. For us, if we really lose anything on these 2 parts, really the margin gets shrinks. Because, and as we mentioned, as Jane mentioned already, that somebody has to pay the price. So we all as a consumer also have to have a mindset that if we really need to buy a sustainable metal, we should not be getting carried away by the cheap products, or getting into some of the product which comes from heavy polluting carbon industries. So those things will have to bring it in our behavior. With this, I think so in terms of what we have done is that during the pandemic time, and even recently all the problem when the container got stuck up in China, we were seeing a huge problem, but not a single order of ours was cancelled, even for export side. And in fact, most of our European companies cancelled the European clients order. We still cater to the European clients order when the container was short in, and entire container bodies were stuck up by China. But we were doing a huge optimization of container triangulation, where we were getting the raw material within the same container, we were sending the export goods. And it worked seamlessly well. Obviously, a lot of back-end IT and AI gone in behind to that, because we were tracking container start from Canada, and by the time our supplies have to move in the same container to Germany. So it's a huge AI backed thing which we use, and which has helped all our vendors also, because none of our vendors suffered during pandemic time. So first lockdown, yes, our plant was almost closed. But then after that, there was a pent-up demand and there was a huge thing, and we made we were running at 110% capacity, and that also was by the time we were doing that, so even our suppliers, we could make that their financing remains intact. Their financing remain intact, they remain alive, because we knew that eventually these things will have to again go back to a very huge recovery mode on this part. So if we really destroy the entire supply chain and if we don't take care of it, it becomes difficult then immediately then to take care of the immediate demand which comes up.
I think one key point you're trying to make here is that micromanagement becomes very difficult in key aspects of the supply chain, especially when you're operating at the scale that you do globally.
I think technology uses are very critical, especially because that actually helps you to maintain a very optimized working capital requirement.
Absolutely. So with that, I would like to invite Mr. Mayur Gandhi, who is an industry expert amongst us. He is CFO of DB Shankar. Please excuse me if my pronunciation is not all right. I have a very industry specific, I'll ask you in the meantime, we can arrange for the mic. So I have a very industry specific question for you. Since you are a part of the transportation, more so the fuel sector, so how is sustainability, given that transportation is a key aspect of it and fuel an even more important aspect of it, how is this niche industry developing when we talk about environmental consciousness and the supply chain?
For DB Shankar, and we provide solutions for the supply chain to many of our clients here. So, and this is the right forum, I think, on the C2FO here, because we have to all allocate some budget to the ESG, right? And there is a need for the technology to provide support for the ESG in many manners. I think the CFO have a role to play, allocating some budget to the ESG every time. So, I think in transportation industry, which is, I think, as Mr. Mantri said, rightly 30% contribution from the CO2 emission, and everybody is concerned about that. And India is still at a baby step level in terms of what can be done, and a lot more can be done from the supply chain perspective. So, and we at Shankar, we manage about 6 million square feet of warehouse in India, plus we do more than 100,000 TEUs, 125,000 tons of freight cargo. While doing so, and as rightly asked, we also took baby steps to start with, but now it's growing to be bigger. So I think we are now capabilities in our company to move 100% CO2 neutral air freight operation. We partner with airlines who can actually support this movement. We have partnered with carriers who can also support this operation. Electronic vehicle usage is becoming very common in day-to-day life for us. So the load-bearing capacity is still a big concern in India. We don't have big trucks which can be actually supporting this electrical vehicle movement, but it will come. It will come. It's not far away. And I think somebody mentioned about China plus one. I think now it's being China plus one plus Europe, right? So I think we need China plus Europe, because Europe production capacity is also curtailed quite a lot. So there is much more focus of manufacturing in India, and we need to gear up for the next future trend in the industry. Talking about the warehousing space, and as Anay rightly mentioned, there is a bit of investment required, but flexibility comes in when you really outsource the supply chain solutions to the specialists in this area. So, and I believe that with flexibility for companies like
any brand right now, how fussy or how choosy are they, and how conscious do companies have to become now? Is it time for them to pull up their socks?
Yeah, Uvi, thanks for the question. So, it's really good to see how the economies across the world are coming together for a common environmental goals and for sustainable solutions in the supply chains, on our operations. So, even on the investment front, if we look at, so our financial industry is also encouraging, contributing towards it. So there are any fund house, if you see the major funds, so they have a dedicated ESG funds, so which are actually targeting the companies, those who are ESG compliant. So it is encouraging the companies to adapt to more and more sustainable solutions, and so in case of any fundraisings, like there are a lot of options on the green financings available, so green bonds are being issued. So there, all these earlier, what used to happen is there used to be a financial covenant testing to check the financial health of the company. Now it is all the KPIs, ESG compliant KPIs, those are set for the companies and those are monitored on a quarterly or annually basis. So this overall is encouraging the corporates to adapt to more and more sustainable solutions in their operations, in their entire supply chain. So yeah, I think so. Overall, it's all adding it to the environmental goals. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sharma, for your input. Mr. Datta, what's your take? What is the path henceforth with respect to, as we have been talking, sustainable resilience or resilience to build more sustainability across the supply chain? What lies ahead for companies?
Supply chain being a very important function of any organization. Unfortunately, the ESG is nobody's baby. Somebody said that somebody has to pay a cost. Unfortunately, ESG in our life, it is somebody else's job. So like we say, the suppliers should comply with the covenants. But you look at, I will take a little digression on that.
Yes, please.
Even in this room, right now, they are conditioning for about 50 people running at about 21 degrees. I also ran hospitality business in my life. You look at this is unsustainable, right? People don't need it right now. Secondly, in the morning, if you brush and shave, and with a running tap, you waste at least 9 liters of water. A 15-minute shower, running shower, you waste at least 17 to 20 liters of water. In kitchen tap, washing the vegetables and the kitchen utilities, it takes about 30 liters a day. Is it sustainable? We talk about industry to be first look at various parts of environmental protection and awareness. I think we all should put our hand on our heart and say that tomorrow onwards we will not do it. Thank you. That's very, very important for us. Secondly, even a lot of energy companies, they talk about that you switch off your car in the red lights and then restart it. Of course, luxury cars, they have an option to do that. But these are very much needed. Coming back to, sorry for the detour, and coming back to the point of industry-specific sustainability, I think digital will play a major role going forward. It's not limited, digital means AI or email. The innovative options of delivery mechanism or final products or raw materials or anything or services will be very, very important. And that's the way we will make our sustainability journey in ESG framework or no framework, in futuristic manner in supply chain going forward. And it will be a global phenomenon. In India, we have the biggest advantage that we have just started very late. So we have the late riser benefit. By the time people have already tested the sun, we will be having that benefit. I think I'm very, very positive on that.
Usually have the first mover advantage, but late riser benefit also sounds like a good idea. So then, Mr. Mahajan, what's your take about the future of sustainability and supply chain?
India is, we know that India has a huge population. India is a very energy-consuming industry. We know how, the whole oil story, when the oil goes up, Indian economy goes down and vice versa and so on. And I think, we have an opportunity. I think Manas correctly mentioned that each of us has a responsibility to take charge. The same holds true for organizations. We need to hold ourselves responsible. We need to hold our supply chains responsible. And when I say supply chains, I mean our tiers, many levels down. We need to hold all of ourselves responsible to make sure that we are delivering a sustainable solution at the end of the day. This country needs it. We are a growing country. We need energy, and the amount of energy we need can only come if we are as sustainable as can be. I think all of us are doing our part. From an organizational perspective, each of the organizations is doing our part. There is, of course, a need to have more awareness about it, and I think forums such as this bring that awareness. So I think collectively, I think we'll get there. The future is bright.
Peer accountability sometimes is almost as important as accountability to the employer or superiors. Mr. Soni, what would you like to add to this?
Something what they both said, in terms of, he referred to oil. So what has India done in case of oil? 20% of our supplies now come from Russia at $30 below whatever is the price of barrel. So which means the average cost comes down. So innovate. Try to see how to do it differently so that you are going to benefit, so play to win with the benefit of all. So again, I am saying that what will be important is how are you going to digitize the entire trade. That's going to be very important going forward because that is most critical. Look at the tier 2, 3, 4 vendors. That's the other most important thing. So whatever practices, big corporates have good practices. We'll have to educate right up to the end. And that is what is required. I just take a step back. We want our materials. We put stiff targets and then we expect them to be sustainable. So I think that's something which we have to think about.
This innovation is needed in the form of R&D mostly by private companies right now, and there's a saying in English that I think innovation is the mother of necessity. So I think we have reached that stage when it comes to our environment and sustainability. So with that, Mr. Mantri, as Mr. Datta said, you have the late riser advantage when it comes to this question. What is your take with respect to sustainability and resilience along the supply chain, of course?
I think one thing what we all are saying, it's non-negotiable. I think that's what eventually we'll have to all think that this is the direction which we'll have to work. We keep talking about the larger goals, 2050 and all this thing, which is fine. But I think it also has to be, we'll have to take a baby steps first. So we'll have to keep taking whatever in our areas, whatever we do. I think every day we start thinking that how sustainable or whether we can do something different and make it more sustainable. So like in our logistics side, in our inland transport, we started putting, now our logistics team to say that how we can move from the road transport to maximization of rail transport, because railways is still electrified, renewables, so we are working on it. See, it's easier. I mean, for them, it was a huge resistance because road transport is quicker, it's easier. It's, even your transporter hears you, here you have to talk about the railways and you have to deal with different things. But we started pushing that, and we have now been successful to a large extent. So what I'm saying that these examples will have to keep building in each and our businesses, because it's good to talk about in a strategic level, but I think the steps which will take us to the right direction.
That is so true. There's again an English idiom that says that well begun is half the battle won. So it is always the hardest to start, but we always have to take baby steps. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and can we have a big round of applause for our panelists?
Thank you, Urvi, and respected speakers on the panel for that wonderful conversation. As it is said, that change is constant, and to make anything sustainable, the change has to start at your home, followed by the organizations, of course. Thank you so much. I'd like to call upon Mr. Manav Khurana, the Director for Account Management at C2FO, to kindly give away a token of thanks to our respected speakers. Mr. Anurag Mantri, thank you. Mr. Nikhil Sohoni, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Mr. Ramit Mahajan, thank you, sir, for joining us. And Mr. Manav Satta, thank you. Well, that brings us to the end, but before closing it, we definitely want to hear what does Mr. Raj Katari, the Senior Director, Enterprise Sales India, C2FO, has to say. Your closing remarks, please.
Thanks. No suspense really. The only thing I wanted to say is thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for taking the effort to be here. And thank you for making the evening it is what it is, especially helping us with your ideas and share. Now, on these two topics we talked about, both on supply chain, liquidity in supply chain, we talked about sustainability. I was talking to a senior executive, a board member in one of the large organizations. And I asked him this question, so what do you have in, we were traveling on the flight, it was right next to mine, and you can't resist asking some questions when you have a great audience. So I'm like, so how do you think about these questions? He said, these two are so critical that it's actually contributing to one of the top 3 priorities of the board. And that was a bit surprising for me. I'm like, so how's that? He says, as an organization, we're thinking, what does it take for us to re-engineer ourselves from where we are to getting to become a completely customer-first kind of a mindset organization, so that we are able to meet the customer demands and requirements at the best possible degree. We've got a long way to go. And we realize that a lot of what we do is so dependent and deeply dependent on the success of our suppliers and how we think about sustainability, because that is one of the core requirement of our end customers who's becoming an evaluation criteria when they actually work with us. And they said, the more and more we put efforts into these two conversations and do it the right way, it's helping them get a lot more ahead in terms of how they're thinking about meeting these large companies and meeting those requirements. So there you go, I mean, interesting statement. Doing the right by supply chain and by sustainability is helping them get to be a lot more customer centric. Yeah, I mean, think about it. I think a lot of the conversations here today revolved in some different shape and form on that whole thing. One other thing I've heard very frequently from many leaders, and I'm kind of tempted to put it out there, is how do we think about sustainability, right? It's not just ESG, and I've heard almost every one of you say it in different shapes and forms again. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of environment, social governance, all those right things, but sustainability is also about, do we have the right economics of doing it? Are we doing it in a win-win formula? Are we doing it in a way we know we can continue to scale it in a meaningful, purposeful way? So sustainability is about how do I drive balance between being right by environment and social, but also being right by the business and the stakeholders who are involved, and coming together as one set to make it meaningful for everyone. I personally loved hearing some of these ideas and definitely walk away with the fact that it's top of mind for some of the leaders who spoke today. So again, thank you for being here, thank you for your contribution, and thank you for fueling the thought leadership conversations, and hopefully we continue to keep the dialogue. So have a good evening, hope to spend some time with some of you. All the best.
Thank you, sir. I hope all of us gained insights from the sessions today and how to redress liquidity problems and create resilient supply chains has really gained that importance in the house. With that, I close the ceremony. My name is Devika, and you have been a lovely audience. Thank you so much. The house is open for cocktail and dinner and networking, of course. Thank you so much.